All right, guys, I think it's time for an oil change. It's been almost a couple of years now and only about, I'd say 300 miles worth of street driving. That's about all I've done in the last couple of years. Just been too busy with other things really. And I just dumped that oil just more because of its age, not because of its use. Yes, so it's always a good idea to run a magnetized oil pan sump plug bolt, and that always shows a lot, because if there's anything, you know, fishy going on with the internals of your engine, rest assured that it's going to get stuck to that. Okay, so that's the first batch that's come out and looks pretty good. Like I said, it hasn't really been used much, you know, probably a few hundred miles worth of driving and some street thrashing. That's about it. The last couple of years, it's probably all I'd have time for, to be honest. Okay, let's take a look at this. See if there's any. I can see it's just slightly sludgy, and that's just because it's sitting around too long instead of being used. And you also got to remember, with this I do have the large jets in it still, so it's really rich. And what I mean by the large jets in the carb is when it was on 12 psi at the drags, and that's how it's been left since then, which is since 2011, so a long time ago. I know I'm a little bit slack. I should have put the smaller jets in it, but yeah. So no, it looks good. Doesn't look like there's any bright stuff or shavings or anything like that, which is always a good sign. And this is the moment you dread every time, you know, you do a few hundred miles on these 700-800 horsepower deals, and then you do an oil change, and this is the moment of truth. Okay, so I'll grab this filter off. There we go. Well, can't see nothing. This looks cool to me. Yeah, these magnets on these plugs are pretty powerful. And if they were gonna pull something in, especially with this thing of mine mostly sitting around, you know, especially these later years, sure enough it's gonna attract to it and stick to it. But yeah, looks cool. Yeah. That's the front one. Looks good to me. Yeah, there's two, because it's in a Capri, and obviously for it to clear its cross member, so it's a Cleveland sump. It's a custom sump by ASR to suit Cleveland in Capri. And it's a big mother, this one. It's about, it takes up like, I don't know, 10 litres. So it's a 10 litre capacity sump. And you need volume. Volume's really important. Just, you know, overall, the more volume you have, the more the oil can recover. You know what I mean? Like it needs its recovery for it to still, you know, keep its qualities. You know, If you opt for a 6 litre, 7 litre thing, and you're street driving a lot, or road racing, or even drag racing, and being a wet sump, obviously, things get shot out into the motor, drain backs, gets down hot, and the more volume you have, it gives it a chance to recover and cool and then be used again by the time the pickup grabs it all again, and stuff like that. So that's why you need capacity. Okay, let's go outside for this. My K&N oil filter. And now I don't cut these up. Yeah, so there's nothing here that leads me to suspect anything, or for me to, go ahead and cut open this filter, so I won't. People say, there's always going to be something, even really, really minute that can possibly show, but I'm pretty pleased with this. I can't see anything, so that's good. It's a good sign. Badass. Yeah guys, so pretty much the same oil as last time. I used the Penrite stuff, the 2570, and it's got the double dose of full zinc protection, and that just gives it a nice coating, and it's good for cold starts as well, and especially on something like this, that really gets used or driven and stuff like that. So it's good for the initial cold start. Yeah, and that's just, if you have a look there, large capacity, competition and high performance gas engines, petrol engines. Yeah guys, and also, so I've got 2 of them, 5 litres each. It'll take 2 of them, and I pour 1 on each bank. So I'll pour 5 litre container through that way, let it go through that side of the head, right through the drain backs into the valley on that end, through the rollers and that, and then I'll do that one next and let it go that way. You may remember a couple of years ago I did a bit of a post or a video about going this path in running this type of an oil, especially for your old school build, and especially this thing here being forced induction. And typically combinations like this run slightly larger clearances everywhere, compared to its naturally aspirated brother. And this particular motor oil is specifically designed for engines like this. So old school large capacity V8s, you know what I mean, with a bit of power. And with now me only doing street duties, this is a well-suited oil for what I'm doing with this now. And if you've watched a lot of guys, interview a lot of racers and a lot of professionals, they would even swear that they make more power and have better ring seal with oils more like this, you know what I mean, like in drag racing or in circuit racing. So always do your own research. Don't just think like, oh, look at the numbers there, that's too thick, and blah blah blah, it's all below me. You do your own research and you see what you're doing with your actual engine or your car, and you pick an oil appropriate to that. So with me now, this thing's 700 to 800 horsepower, and all I'm doing now is street cruising, and of course you give it a little bit here and there on the street, which doesn't load up, but this type of oil doesn't break down like those other oils. And what I mean by that is an old school Cleveland like this, you know what I mean, generating close to 800 plus horsepower, I should say, it tends to get hot. It's not a modern engine where it's got revised modern style cooling, water passages and galleys and all that stuff. So these type of engines, they tend to get hot, and it's up to you to sort of tame everything down, obviously with your own cooling system, but with choosing the appropriate oil as well, because you don't want your oil to cook and break down, you know what I mean? You want your oil to always be stabilized. So that's the choice that I've gone for. And you always do your own research, don't just listen to others. And it is always wise to have a good read at what they say. So you know what I mean? Here it's got the double amount of zinc protection, which is awesome to have. It's got all these other properties, for the oil not to oxidize, and things not to rust, and all this protection stuff. Yeah, so you can read here that it's to suit old school engines with high ambient temperatures. Also, if you have a read here, suitable for many competition engines running competition vehicles in circuit, drag racing, rallying, drifting, hill climb, targa events, time attack, circuit events and whatnot. Maintain oil pressure and larger capacity. Is product choice for many competitors running competition vehicles in circuit and drag racing, rallying, drifting, hill climb, targa events, time attack, and so on. So I found these last few years running this type of an oil on this thing, mate, it's sweet, it's awesome. All right, oil's in, everything's sealed up, plugs are out, cylinders are lubed. If you remember, I do that, especially if this thing's been sitting for a while, and it's been sitting actually since my vacation a few months back, so I haven't started it or did anything with it since then. And now look at this, look how rich. Like I said, I've still got the big jets in the carbs, and she's just running a lot of fuel, staying rich. And now I'll just hand crank it and just get just a little bit of I did fill up the oil filter before I screwed it on as much as I can before it, there is a bit of an angle there before it tends to pour out. But oil filter got filled about halfway up before I screw it on. And then I'll just give this now a decent amount of hand turn. So I'll work that lube that's around the rings. So I'll just wash that up and down the cylinder walls, and it'll give me a chance for the pump to start priming and working its way, through the filter and whatnot, and up through the galleys and that. Alright, so just work that, and you can see, there we go. And if you remember, I did this a while back, and look how easy she turns now. Yeah, the plugs are out, but So we'll just get that oil pump priming a bit of that new oil up through the filter and whatnot, and through the oil channels. And I'll fire it up after that. And this oil's good, that zinc content and all that other properties that it has. It forms a little coating. I mean, I've sussed it out before. It's almost like a lubricant that hangs on there even after a while. Even if it's months of not being used, you'll feel the component very slippery, very lubricated, which is good. It's good for cold starts. This thing hasn't got an oil accumulator or anything like that. So basically it relies on good shit for the next time you do a cold start. You get what I mean?